We're moving on to problems which involve the application of the 5 principles of conduct contained in the CPA Code of Professional Conduct, which I covered in a previous video, and also an exploration of ethical issues. Please consider downloading the problems and attempting to solve them yourself before you watch me solve them so that you can maximize your learning. As always, I'm first going to read the whole question. Hugh Jeffries is leader of a team tasked with exploring the purchase of a new learning management system, LMS for short, for PDT University. The university has, for many years, used Greenboard as their LMS, but recent new entries into the industry indicate that Greenboard may not be the best system for PDT University anymore. Hugh and a team of 4 others have been tasked with comparing Greenboard against 2 other possibilities, LearnSpace and Student Room. Recently, the developers of LearnSpace have asked Hugh to attend an all-expenses-paid symposium in Hawaii being held on the last Thursday and Friday of June. The symposium brings together super users of LearnSpace and includes multiple workshops to fully address all aspects of their system. Hugh feels this will be a perfect opportunity to gain in-depth knowledge of LearnSpace. Hugh, feel free to bring your significant other, says the salesperson from LearnSpace. We've got a deal on hotel rooms for the weekend too, so feel free to stay until Sunday night. We have quite a few others who will be staying as well. The more the merrier. Required. You are one of the other team members who are ultimately making a decision on which system to adopt. Using your knowledge of the 5 fundamental principles of conduct, analyze the situation. Write a memo to Hugh with regards to this trip. In order to begin our analysis, we have to first decide what is the issue. Is the issue the fact that LearnSpace has invited Hugh to a symposium? And the answer is no. The issue is not the fact that LearnSpace is having a symposium. For instance, many publishers of textbooks have symposiums where they bring together customers to share information and learn through workshops. Businesses have events where clients or potential clients can learn more about their products, and that's not a problem. For instance, if you go to a car show, you'll see something similar. Companies showing their products to customers and prospective customers in order to encourage them to buy their products instead of a competitor's. So the issue is not the symposium itself. The issue is also not that the symposium is in Hawaii. The fact that the location happens to be in a place where many of us would want to visit is not the issue. Whether the symposium was in Hawaii or, let's say, Calgary, Alberta, makes absolutely no difference. So what is the issue? The issue is that LearnSpace has offered Hugh additional benefits. The 2 benefits are 1, bringing along Hugh's significant other, and 2, staying for an additional 2 days free of charge. So we now know the issue. Let's remind ourselves about the 5 fundamental principles of conduct. 1. Professional behavior. Remember, this means we protect the reputation of our profession and we protect the interests of the public. 2. Integrity and due care. This means we are honest, straightforward, no cheating, no bias, no self-interest, careful, thorough, and timely. 3. Objectivity. Objectivity means we are free of bias, free of conflict of interest, and free of undue influence by others. 4. Professional competence. This means we have knowledge of accounting standards and related legislation. And 5. Confidentiality. This means to keep information private unless we are given express permission to share the information or we are required to do so by law. It's likely that more than one of these principles would apply to this issue, but I'm going to focus on just 2, integrity and due care, and objectivity. Let's start with integrity. What would happen if Hugh accepted the trip? He may end up biased in favor of LearnSpace compared to the other 2 learning management systems. Remember that biased means to favor one thing, person, or group over another. Because he has received a free gift in the form of a trip with his significant other to a wonderful destination with 2 additional extra days, he may end up favoring LearnSpace, either consciously or unconsciously. He may feel that he owes it to LearnSpace to choose them because they gave him something that otherwise he would not have received. So he's in danger of breaching the no bias portion of integrity. Integrity also means no self-interest. This means that you will not do something that provides you with personal gain or advantage. In accepting this trip, Hugh does breach the no self-interest portion of the principle because he will gain a free vacation for himself and his significant other. Again, keep in mind that the symposium itself and the location in Hawaii do not result in a breach of self-interest because Hugh did not have any input into either of these two choices. It is the bringing of his significant other and the additional 2 days that result in a breach of self-interest because Hugh will gain an advantage from accepting this trip. Let's move on to objectivity. We've already covered the issue of bias under integrity, so we don't have to cover it again under objectivity. However, we have to analyze the issue with regards to free of conflict of interest. Remember that a conflict of interest occurs when the decisions we make may give us an unfair advantage or benefit us in some way, shape, or form. The conflict of interest can be either actual or perceived. Remember that a perceived conflict of interest is if a reasonable outsider looking at the situation would conclude that there is an unacceptable likelihood that a conflict of interest exists. I think we can agree that there is an actual conflict of interest. The trip with his significant other definitely benefits Hugh. There is also a perceived conflict of interest because an outsider looking at this situation would absolutely conclude that there was an unacceptable likelihood that a conflict of interest exists, because it does. Finally, under objectivity, we must be free of undue influence from others. One of the threats to objectivity is pressure or influence by another party. Because LearnSpace has spent money on Hugh and his partner, it is possible that they will have influence over Hugh's decisions. They may use that influence to pressure Hugh, even lightly by mentioning the trip that they gave him. This may result in Hugh favoring their product over the competitors. In summary, we can say that Hugh accepting this trip may result in a breach of the following with regards to the 5 principles of conduct: bias, self-interest, conflict of interest, undue influence. All of this is particularly true because Hugh is the leader of the team choosing the new learning management system. He's in a position of power, and as the leader, he may have more say in the final choice of a system. If he accepts this trip and then recommends LearnSpace, there may be a perception by other team members that Hugh has only done so because of the trip he received. Even if Hugh thinks that LearnSpace is the best choice for the university, his support of LearnSpace may be viewed as biased. The team and the individuals in charge of the university will likely see his choice as biased, even if it is possible for Hugh to remain unbiased. And there's no guarantee he will be unbiased, since he can be affected by unconscious bias, which he is not even aware of. So, if we're going to write a memo to Hugh, how should we structure the memo? What should be the tone of our memo to Hugh? We should definitely shy away from insulting Hugh by outright saying we think he will be biased and that he will be focused on self-interest. After all, none of us want to think of ourselves as biased. When we look in the mirror, we always want to think of ourselves as better than we actually are. Mentioning both biased and a focus on self-interest will simply insult Hugh. Instead, we should focus on the issue of the perception of a conflict of interest. We should indicate that Hugh accepting the offer to bring his significant other and stay the 2 extra days would be viewed by an outsider as posing an unacceptable risk that a conflict of interest exists. We should also focus on the fact that Hugh, in his capacity as team leader, should be free of undue influence. Hugh accepting the trip, bringing his significant other, and staying the additional 2 days may result in LearnSpace applying pressure to Hugh. What should we recommend to Hugh as potential alternatives? If we're going to tell Hugh that we don't want him to take the trip, then we definitely have to provide some kind of alternatives. 1. Hugh could accept the trip but not bring his significant other or stay the extra 2 days. This option still may be perceived as a conflict of interest by an outsider due to the exotic location of the symposium. Remember, the exotic location is not the issue, but a perception of a conflict of interest is through the eyes of an outsider, and that exotic location would be perceived as a benefit to Hugh. Hugh isn't going to be at the symposium all day every day, and the trip is still likely to be perceived as a conflict of interest by an outsider. 2. Hugh could decline the trip and instead send another, more junior member of the team. By removing himself as the team leader, it will eliminate the perception of a conflict of interest with regards to Hugh. However, the other team member will also be perceived as having a conflict of interest, and their choice of the best system to adopt may be viewed as biased. 3. Hugh and his team members could politely decline the offer of the trip. Instead, they could ask all 3 companies to provide them with a presentation, including guest speakers for instance, to demonstrate the benefits of their learning management system. Option 3 is the best option since it ensures that the choice of the learning management system is free of bias, self-interest, conflict of interest, and undue influence. Although I believe all 3 of these choices should be discussed in the memo, it's choice number 3 that I would recommend to you. What if Hugh is your boss as well as the team leader? What would you do? Would you stay silent and just allow the trip to happen? Would you still write Hugh the memo, or would you just let it go? Remember I spoke in a previous video about the accounting scandal at Livent. Ethical behavior is the basis of any well-functioning organization. What is required of all of us is to exhibit courage when we see situations that are questionable. You accepting this trip is questionable because we showed that it definitely breaches more than one of the principles of conduct. If Hugh was your boss as well as the team leader and he was offered this trip, it would be your responsibility and the responsibility of the other members of the team to bring the issue to the attention of Hugh. I would actually recommend that the team meet with Hugh to discuss their concerns. To be clear, showing courage is often frightening. If you look at any of the interviews with individuals who have blown the whistle on unethical behavior, it was frightening. But it is every individual's responsibility to show courage when you see things that are questionable. What if Hugh, after the meeting, still decided to accept the trip with his significant other and the extra 2 days? Then it would be your responsibility, as well as the other team members' responsibility, to bring it to the attention of Hugh's boss. If Hugh's boss refuses to listen, then you should discuss your options with human resources to determine your next steps. Standing by when principles of conduct are breached, either actually or perceived, is not an option when we commit to acting ethically in the workplace.